But the bottom line is the whole thing is falling apart. And I don't know where they're going to get a counterattack from, especially after the last 48 hours. The Russians destroyed 9 Ukrainian brigade headquarters, 200 tons of ammunition, and wiped out a substantial portion of whatever remained of Ukraine's air defense network. So once the mud dries, right now, if you're in Ukraine and you step off the road, you sink up to your waist or chest in mud. If you're in a tank or an armored fighting vehicle, you sink, nothing moves. But I suppose once that finally dries out, and we still have rain at the moment in Ukraine, the Russians will come out and walk over the remaining dead and march further west. How will this end? Well, it'll end when the Russians decide to end it. I think what they've been waiting for, but I think they've been waiting to see governments in Europe turn over, and I think that's coming. I think if you look at what's happening in France right now with Macron, I wouldn't give a plug nickel for Macron in another month. I'd be surprised if he's still there. The British they'll lose the current prime minister and find something new, and they'll go through governments until that economy collapses. The real question is what happens in Berlin with Scholz, who is probably the most uninteresting, unimaginative, and unimpressive leader Germany has had, certainly in the last 1,000 years that I can recollect. So they may be willing to talk to the Europeans. Now, what do the Russians want? Well, they want a Ukraine that's not a threat to Russia, just as we would like a Mexico that's not a threat to us. I don't know how they'll get it without marching all the way to the Polish border. And I think increasingly in Moscow, that's what people are talking about. Bottom line is, what do they do about the people in the West? They'd like them to be neutral. Who's going to guarantee that? We're certainly not going to guarantee it. So it's up to the countries that border Russia, and primarily Germany and France, to sign on for something that guarantees that the neutrality of this sort of rump Ukrainian state. But there's another problem. What happens to Ukraine? There are probably 18 million people left in Ukraine at this point. There were originally 34.5 million, and if you go back to the early 1990s, there were over 80 million people living in the place. So there's not much of Ukraine left. It's in ruins, its population is left, and everybody coming out of the place insists they'll never go back. So we've destroyed Ukraine. Well done, Washington, while the rest of Europe looks on.